Yeah, it was sad.
It's a sad one. I'm trying to laugh. I remember burn. I don't know why it's gotta sound sad when you're trying to laugh.
I don't know. Denim.
Denim.
Exactly.
It's just like the entire hour, just us making random sounds. The entire podcast.
Beep, boop, 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 ba-doom. Doesn't even quite make sense. It's kind of Mario, but not.
Denim.
That's Mario. That was a
The
good
kid
one.
just screaming in the background.
He's making Mario Nars too. The death throes of a Goomba.
Oh God! Toddlers at its finest, going down for nap time. Our parents try to podcast it.
Pretty much.
Well, kind sir, I think this is 64 bits of rage.
Episode 6. Should Nintendo release a Switch Pro?
That was so sad. Title.
I know. I didn't know what else better to name it. I just had nothing.
Should there be a Switch Pro?
Should there be a Switch Pro?
Should we build a snowman? Oh, wrong context.
Yeah. And now we're demonetized. No.
Oh. I'm Eros Coolitz.
I'm Anthony Schultz.
No, it's Coolitz. And this is, of course, 64 bits of rage, and we are talking about should Nintendo do a Pro? Denim.
Yeah, there's been a lot of like rumors circulating whether Nintendo should or should not really make a I don't know what they would call it. Probably not a Pro because that's a very Sony and Microsoft thing. But
does Microsoft call theirs Pro?
No, what was theirs? Xbox One.
No, it's something weird.
Yeah, I can't remember what they called their Pro one. Because they had the Xbox One S. I think that was their digital only. It doesn't have an optical drive, so it's like cheaper.
How would you Xbox generations?
Yeah, both Sony and Microsoft did an in-between one. PlayStation was just PS4 Pro.
Xbox 360, Xbox One. That's it.
I can't remember what they...
Oops, sorry.
What they called it.
I mean, not like that's entirely important because this is a Nintendo podcast and we do a PlayStation podcast, so that's why we really don't particularly care. But we do want to keep things fair when we come up with information and not just feed you bullshit. I mean, well.
Yeah.
Partial.
Well, and plus, I mean, they may be all kind of different now, going in their own way, which we've talked about on this podcast and on Rage Quit, but they do go off of one another.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's their
Xbox One X.
Oh, okay.
So they had the One X, and then they had the One S, and then just the original Xbox One. So
of course, it's kind of hard with because PlayStation has more consoles out there comparatively, and it's like that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely a lot more SKUs, just because they've been in a console generation longer, and then they've also had in between. Sony's been always famous for doing like slims and super slim consoles and
pros and stuff like that. And
the Pro is new to this generation.
Well, yeah, but that's like what their versions of slims and stuff. It's like they're giving you a more simpler design of it, so it could be cheaper for you.
Well, now all three exist though. You have like the base, the slim, and then the Pro. Pro's different.
Yeah, well, yeah,
it's like a better version than the base model. It's more powerful.
Well, I'm intrigued to see, like you said, there are rumors about Nintendo doing there, so...
Yeah, and like on today's podcast, we'll discuss whether they should or should not, like what we think about it, really. I mean, there's nothing obviously concrete, but we can look back, like we were just talking about Sony and Microsoft, what they've done this generation, because Switch is really off a half generation anyway.
Yeah, it kind of always is.
And especially because of the Wii U. And so, would it be important for Nintendo to do that, or... do they just kind of ride on the coattails of the success of the Switch until, a logical end? And then maybe do like a Switch 2 or something.
Well, the weird thing is, though, Nintendo, besides Wii U, really doesn't do pros or anything like that.
Wii U wasn't a pro. That was like mixed marketing. Yeah, that was a separate console.
They should have named it something else because it was the NES, and then it was like the 64, right?
No, Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo, okay. NES, Super Nintendo.
SNES, yeah. N64, GameCube,
the Wii U, and now Switch. And the Wii U kind of fucked up because everyone thought it was kind of like a Pro was what PlayStation and Xbox were doing, so that's what they thought. And then it was just
I don't think they had done that yet either. So
no,
Nintendo would have been the first to kind of do it.
Yeah, like we were talking about too. It's just poor marketing with the Wii U, and especially the name, because like besides the SNES and the NES are the only kind of similar name that they have out there. But then again, it's SNES.
They were like just precursors though
to actual
Sony and Microsoft. So
yeah,
I think you could get away with it a little bit more then.
Yeah, because it goes 64, Nintendo 64, then GameCube, then the Wii.
Yeah, they've always had an interesting naming convention. So has Microsoft, really. Nintendo's is always unique enough where, except for the Wii U, that's the only outlier where it's a different console, but it's still Nintendo.
Yeah.
Xbox is just confusing for people, especially if you're not
in
that ecosystem.
It's not the first Xbox.
No, and people called the original Xbox the Xbox One.
They do, and that's the problem is because it's just... Naming's a huge thing when it comes to consoles. That's why I laugh with PlayStation, because it's PlayStation 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
And there has been some unrest about that, too, because they're like, oh, they're playing it safe. And it was like, it makes sense, and it's easy to market. Like, don't...
PS5, PS1, you know.
Yeah, there's nothing to fix there.
What the fuck's the Xbox One or Xbox One X? Like, wait, what's the first
one? So you have
one?
Xbox 360... Then you have the
Xbox
One, which I thought that was weird when that initially came out. And then now people have to say, like, the original Xbox or, like, OG Xbox or the first Xbox. Like, you have to throw in a qualifier that's not really moniker.
You're either saying the 64, with Nintendo 64, or NES, SNES, or you're saying PlayStation 1, PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, PS5.
Yeah, Sony in my mind makes the most sense.
Well, and then, or you're going to do, like, such vastly different names like the Nintendo did. Because, like, you got the 64, the Cube, the GameCube, and then the Wii, which they're monogrammed down to, like, one syllables, like 64, Wii.
Oh, yeah.
GameCube's
the only one that's like...
Well, people call it the Cube. GameCube.
The Cube, okay.
The Cube. GameCube.
I see it shortened to, like, GC a lot. Like, when they do parentheticals next to a game. Like, what platform is this on?
GC. GameCube. GC. But, like, it was
PS2.
Easy. Yeah. It's easy to say. Then you're, like, in the Xbox 360. Xbox One,
which I liked. I thought 360 was a cool one, but then they didn't want to go
180.
720
because it's just fucking turning in a circle.
Well, those was 360. 360 is a circle.
It should have been 180.
But it was. But then it like. But I could use the same argument where it's like a 180 is like you think that your first one didn't do that well, so you have to do the exact opposite. I don't think people would take the branding that way. If
people
they
are that smart, though.
Yeah, I think people are smarter about consumerism than some of these companies like Microsoft give us credit for.
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't think people would see Xbox 720 and be like, well, they're back where they started. Like, I don't think that would happen.
No, but it's funny, though.
And the 360 is by far the most popular console.
Get it back up on your turnip truck and came back where you came from.
Yeah.
That's a very accurately portrayed concert, and I don't appreciate that.
And it would have been cool. Obviously, they would have had to switch stuff up and getting, like, too far down the line.
Yeah,
well, it should have been, like...
Xbox 180-something degrees or something stupid like that, yeah. No, that would have been too far. I see you can get away with the 2 generations, but...
Yeah, and I heard, too, that they were afraid if they went with that, besides the, like, oh, we're just circling back around to the same thing, or turning our backs on something that made us successful. The other thing is the numbers are going to be too closely aligned to, like, resolution standards.
No,
so it's people are going to say, like, 720 and think, like low-end HD, and then 1080 would be HD, and then eventually they'd get to, obviously, like, 4K and stuff like that, so... They didn't want to go that route. But
that makes sense.
Because the Xbox is a good name on its own.
I can understand that argument where they didn't want to be like, we don't want to get it confused with
the resolution at the time.
TV.
Yeah, so it's like, does this console only
do it in
720p?
Yeah.
Or 1080?
And people are that dumb, they would think that.
That might happen. I could picture that.
It might happen.
The whole, like, spinning around and it's, an old console.
No, that
dumb,
yeah.
But
still, I mean...
And then people giving Sony shit for naming the PS5. It was like, we've had 4 generations where it's just the PS1, 2, 3, and 4. Like, why wouldn't the PS5?
PlayStation 1 is PlayStation and PlayStation 2, so...
Yeah, their PlayStation 1... It was the numeral. It was spelled out. It was PSONE. That was their Slim, their very first Slim.
That's what I mean.
Which is the PS1 that I have.
Yeah, and
the Slim.
They've been doing that from the get go, so that makes sense. But so, how do you honestly feel about? Because we'll dive into the Nintendo one. How do you feel yourself about consoles in general doing Slims and Pros?
I like Slims and Pros, to be honest. I mean, I can't say that I've like religiously purchased like every iteration, even being as much of a Sony fan as I am. You know, which comes up, you know, here a little bit too, but obviously more dominantly on our sister podcast, Rage Quit.
Yeah.
That's what it's centered on. And so people who have listened to that and this know that I prefer Sony. I have not purchased like every single Sony like iteration. Like I don't even have a PlayStation Pro, which a lot of like hardcore gamers like ate that up. You know, if they're Sony fans, they got that. It'd be something cool to have in a collection kind of a thing, and like go back to it. We'll see how backwards compatibility is with the PS5. But there have been some instances where, depending on the generation or what's going on, I have bought a Slim, and I've really enjoyed them. I think they're usually like a cheaper market price. They tend to last longer, in my opinion. The ones that I've had, at least.
Yeah.
And
because how many times did your PlayStation 3 crap out on you?
yeah, so that's the only console generation that I had, and the 360 had similar problems too. For whatever reason, with that generation, because of the tech at the time and manufacturing, it was like there was a ton of issues with the 360 and the PS3. They were just bricking, left and right. So my PS3 bricked twice. I sent it in once because it was like $100. I didn't have enough money. I was working like minimum wage at a grocery store. I was working at Safeway. And I had roommates and stuff, and it was like the PS3 was like my new console that I had like purchased and stuff, like for originally $700. Like I had the old school fat like PS3 that was like
big boy
80 gigabyte or 40 gigabyte hard drive, which was like the smallest one, like because it was so expensive. That was like that's all I could. I was already stretching my budget trying to get it. So it died. I spent the $100. I got it back. I played it for maybe another like year or so, maybe 2. It died again, and I was just kind of like fed up at that point. I was like, I'm not spending another $100. I would rather just buy a new one if I want one. And by that time, the PS3 Slim had come out.
Which we have in our bedroom right now.
And that has lasted a lot longer than my original PS3.
So do you feel like...
And it's like, it seems a little archaic because it's got like a button and a spring-loaded like disc drive on top.
Which is funny.
But it also lasted a lot longer because it didn't have like the
as
magnets,
many movement parts, and
you know, holding in your optical
so you can stand it up
and your drive, And so even though it seems like a little jank compared, it has lasted a lot longer. It's done really well. So and then my original PS1 was always a Slim, and I still have it, and it still functions just fine. And I got that probably circa 2001, so almost 20 years ago. I was late to the PS1 game as a kid. And that still functions beautifully. It works great. Like, it looks like it just came out of the box, which is kind of crazy. Obviously, I've like cleaned it a few times, but that's all I've done.
Well,
I haven't done anything else.
That's just cleaning them, just basic console maintenance. I mean, your brother's
and the PS4 we've had has lasted too
forever. Yeah, the PS3 I think your brother had was a refurbished one, but at the same time, like,
and it was the old school fat one, and it died. That was the same model that I had. That
we
died.
also didn't take care of it. And that kid would like fucking crack out in games.
And those new consoles usually have trouble with like cooling and stuff like that, and
it wasn't like just like collected, like when we
it was like caked
dust and like the gel fucking burned off, and
which was a common issue with those is like they use a really cheap thermal paste over the main processors, and so it would dry out and crack, and then it would separate sometimes the whole chipsets from the board.
Jesus.
And it would brick your console because obviously the chips on the motherboards would be removed from the motherboard, so it can't function because it doesn't think it has the hardware that it needs to have. So you have to be really good and spot on with like resoldering it yourself, or again send it in like I did. Because I didn't have I can
resolder it, but you
don't have the I don't have the soldering tools, and I definitely didn't at the time.
You definitely want to fucking do that. You're young in your 20s. You're like, I just want to fucking play my games. I don't have to fun to fix this shit.
Well, and I knew that if I took it apart, it would void the warranty, and then they wouldn't be able to like repair it. They would refuse to. So I was like, I'll just send it in at least the first time. But then I went to like a big box store, and I bought my PS3 Slim. Not even the Super Slim. and it came with Assassin's Creed 3, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and that one's functioned just fine. So I do, like, on the whole, like the idea of, like, slim consoles that Sony's done. I think they hold up. I only purchase them if I need to, kind of a thing. That's kind of what I'm, like, stabbing at. I'm not gonna, like, just replace my PS4 thinking that it's gonna go out and get the slim, you know, or something.
It's work when
those
it's
lines.
working fine.
The Pro I would have liked to get. It was, again, at the time I was working, like, you know, 60, 70 hours a week, so there was really no point.
Yeah,
Like, I could have purchased it,
working so much,
but I
and when
was
you
barely
play
playing any games at that time, and
then
so
you're streaming fully, and you're working. It's before
Yeah.
our roles reversed.
yeah, exactly. And so it was like, you know, I wasn't at home running ASI or Raising Ollie. I was, you know, working like I should.
And I was at home, and I mean, I don't do that.
Yeah, and so it was just like, you know, the time where I would have been able to purchase a PS4 Pro, I didn't have the time to even play it, so then I never purchased it. And then now that, our, you know,
Company.
work family life has, like, flipped, our roles have flipped, and we have our company now. Even then, that would have been like 9 months ago, 10 months ago or so, last spring. There was already, like, rumors that, you know, the PS5 and the next iteration of the Xbox was going to come out holiday 2020.
Yeah.
So it was like, well, why get a PlayStation 4 Pro now?
When I'm going to get the PS5 when it rolls on out.
Yeah, I just have to wait a year or a year and a half or whatever. And so,
Well, yeah, the PS4's been fine. The only time it, like, had any issues was when our electric company was working, and then turn the power off and then shut it off.
yeah, and all of them. And I've read from other people that they have common issues like that with the PlayStation 4 and stuff, and their Xbox, where it's like it'll flake out like every time they turn it on. Sometimes,
Jesus, that would be annoying.
Yeah, where they have to, like, rebuild the database and do all that stuff, and it takes forever for them to get into it. And John, our good friend and co-host for FGG, he doesn't have a PlayStation 4 anymore because his did that.
Every time.
It reset his thing every single time, and so eventually he just got tired of it. He moved to PC gaming and Nintendo Switch, so that's what he does. But yeah, on the whole, I do like the idea of it. I think Pro increments are good. We have longer life cycles for consoles now. I mean, you're talking about like 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
So if you're especially ebbing up on 8, you know, if people want to buy a more expensive version that does a little bit more, or looks a little bit better, then more power to them. You know,
Yeah,
I would have if I had time to played it. And then the slim ones, like I said, I like those as well because I just kind of use them as I need for a particular generation. So my PS1 I got that way, but with the PS3 I ended up purchasing the slim, and it was cheaper and then it's lasted longer. So,
yeah.
You know,
Well, so do you think...
I praise that.
True.
Instead of just getting, because the alternative was if I really wanted to stick with the PS3 and not switch, you know, consoles, I would have gotten a fat PS3 again that probably would have broken down, and I would have had the same kind of issues even if I had purchased it new.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of having a safety net, you know, partway through a generation. So.
Well, so do you think with, like, when it comes to pros and, like, this in between steps that they're taking into heart things that, you know, they're not necessarily just because generations are longer. That they're just pushing out consoles, but instead of them pushing out consoles, like, you know, like the PS3, they learned from that and stuff. Or they push out a Pro where it's, you know, like I said, it's the simpler version and it's less complicated. It's cheaper and kind of counteracts all those issues that may have been on a previous version or the initial one that was released.
What was your question in there?
Like, is that, like, what the pros are kind of for?
Oh, the pros are...
Or at least the slims.
The slims definitely are. They're like a cheaper price entry, and they are usually just better manufactured because now the technology has had time to either, like, miniaturize, or there's been a breakthrough in a particular area in console manufacturing. Manufacturing usually, the longer you manufacture something, costs usually drive down. So that'll, of course, will make it so that Sony can still turn a profit, or Microsoft, but manufacturing costs therefore are cheaper as well, so they're making the same if not more you know, off of even selling a console. I think it's just a good, like, safety net, really. The pros are upgraded, they're beefed up versions of a current console generation.
That's why
so,
I
like,
get mixed up.
yeah, like The PS4 Pro is the better version between the two. It's got better hardware in it. Like, it's faster. Your graphical fidelity is going to be better. Instead of topping out at like 1080, just like regular HD, it'll show your games in 4K.
Okay. Which makes sense.
And games went through, and they like studios did specifically, and updated games so that take that next step in graphical fidelity, because the PS4 Pro had better hardware. Right?
True.
And same thing with Microsoft with their Xbox One X. So
yeah, well, it makes sense too when you have the original console comes out, and then of course you're gonna have like a simpler version, so it cost kind of differs there. Cheaper parts, easier still. People can still consider a Switch or a Pro or whatever. It's just the slim version.
Yeah.
And then you get the Pro version, which they're kind of amping up because console lives are so long, but technology life normally is not, like TVs and other things are constantly changing.
There's a few like common like computer science laws that govern the rate of like memory and technology. I think Moore's law is one of them, but it's like it says within a certain amount of time that I'll look it up real quick, Heather, because I don't want to like misparaphrase.
Auto paraphrasing.
This is something that I would have like had at the tip of my tongue when I was a computer science major, but
that was eons ago.
A long time ago. Yeah, that was more than 10 years ago now. So.
Oh, that's not our age showing in the podcast. Yeah. Denim.
I'll bring it up real quick, and this does like pertain to consoles and
just electronics and stuff in general.
Law. Okay, cool.
Cool.
Let's see. Moore's law refers to Moore's perception that the number of transistors on a microchip doubles every 2 years. Microchip.
You say trip.
Whatever.
It's a trip, y'all.
Though the cost of computers is halved. Moore's law states that we can expect the speed and capability of our computers to increase every couple of years, and we will pay less for them. This has been relatively true. So, understanding Moore's law. In 1965, Gordon E. Moore, co-founder of Intel, postulated that the number of transistors that can be packed into a given unit of space will double about every 2 years. Today, however, the doubling of installed transistors on silicon chips occurs closer to every 18 months. So, you round to 2 years. So, but this was back in 1965, and we've really only cut it down to 18 months. So, I'm going to say that he was still right. The only thing is, as microchips or like CPUs, the brain of your console or your computer.
Yeah.
The amount of transistors that you can fit on there, it's going to double but have the cost, which seems to be true from what we just read. Memory, though, can't keep up.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's the one thing you got to think. It's like, well, yeah, you can show more on a screen, a traditional, either computer screen or television screen. We'll just go with television screen and say console. But that doesn't mean you're going to have enough memory to be able to store enough information to be able to render that like fully.
Yeah, because
so it's kind of plateaued off. Like CPUs are still getting more and more powerful, and we're fitting more and more cores onto a single microchip. But
memory,
though, doesn't function in the same way. So, like, the amount of, like, hard drive space you have, or, like, with solid-state drives now, that's not infinite or matching the same growth as, like, processing power.
No, that's why, like, they've come up with, like, the paid services, like the PlayStation Network, the cloud kind of a sense what most people will get.
Yeah, and that's why like streaming consoles like Sony does with PlayStation Now. Microsoft has a good service like that too, where you can stream games. They're calling it the xCloud. They already talked about that last E3, and then the Google Stadia, of course. And so these are trying to sort of circumnavigate that. We're trying to use internet speed, and now the question is not so much like if we know for sure that memory can't keep up with processors becoming better and better, then and we're like you said, we're putting things in server farms and we're putting them in the cloud. We're using cloud computing.
I always thought you actually put stuff in an actual cloud when I was a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like in the clouds. Like, How does that save there? But,
That's so
the
funny.
naivety of a young teen.
They
so.
kind of like show it though, yeah. Because
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
like they were
yeah.
like old school like flow charts pretty much.
Yeah, no, but like when you're young teenager,
Oh, yeah, of course.
you just hear that because
Yeah.
you're like, do you think?
Because it's like jargon. They took like a meteorological noun and then made it into
it's
computer
like,
jargon.
You hear about hard saves and stuff, and that makes sense because it's actually on the floppy disk or the disk or whatever at the time, thumb drive and stuff, and so you understand the concept of a hard save, and there's only so much room.
Yeah.
And, that's when it comes with memories. Things don't get smaller for saving.
Yeah, well, and the crazy part with like clouds, like we all use cloud services.
Mm-hmm.
Very few of us actually understand how it works, and even people who design like cloud computing now don't
Really
know
how it works. It just works.
It functions, but essentially what you're doing is like you're either taking a little bit from everywhere, like our global network, and it's pinging around everywhere across the globe.
It's just kind of bouncing. It's not necessarily
in purgatory, which is being used as an ipso facto storage, but is then therefore immeasurable. Which is kind of crazy, like, to think about. And now we're at the point where we're actually using it to act as if it is a supercomputer by, like, slaving global computers to be able to store things or function. But the question now is more like lag. Like, how do you get it so there's no lag in between whatever server farm or the cloud to
your console,
your TV?
I feel like we just veered off so hardcore nerd that my brain just broke.
We did a little bit, yeah. And I'm like oversimplifying a lot of things too.
And to be fair, I honestly, it works.
It functions, so you don't care how it functions. Yeah.
Like 90% of the people who are like, unlike you, who are like our computer majors, they don't give a fuck. They pay the $10.99.
Well, no, and like I said, I'm like just giving like
I pay my $12.99 so I don't lose my games.
The little bit of information that I have like about it. But it is important to consider. It's like you can see that some consoles are like pivoting more towards that. So
it's like we always crack the jokes where the Switch came back with cartridge.
Well, yeah, well, because solid state drives or solid state storage like that is because you remove again the moving parts, and so your console's gonna last longer.
Exactly.
And now cartridges have come back because you can store more on them now. We didn't used to be able to.
Well, yeah, I remember back in the day, playing my 64, it's not working, just blow on it, get the dust out of there.
Yeah, and a lot of those. I don't know if the 64 did. For sure. John would know, but I know earlier consoles with cartridges, they have battery packs in them on top of it.
The 64 didn't.
And so if the battery pack...
Let me double check that. Don't quote me.
You would know. They would be inside the cartridge itself. You'd have to take apart a Nintendo 64 cartridge.
I'm double checking. Someone will know on the interwebs.
Probably. And so, like, if you had an NES game that went out and wasn't drawing any power, it was because the battery pack had gone out in it. And so what you could do is you could take it apart, and then you could take some dirt cheap, like, not great NES game.
Yep, they did.
And pilfer. I thought they might have.
And it looks actually really simple to change out.
They're really simple. I've done it before.
Yeah.
And so you'd take, like, a super simple, NES game that, wasn't worth much and didn't matter, and you'd take the battery pack from that and you'd put it in the, you'd replace the battery pack in the game you did want, kind of a thing, so you could save it. But now with cartridges, it's like, it's pretty much just solid state storage. So it
like step-by-step instructions how to change it.
It can read that information faster. And then you also don't have the moving parts of an optical drive, which the more something moves just due to friction and basic laws of physics, you're creating heat. If any kind of dust gets in there, you're talking about wear and tear over time. The more and more it's used because it's moving, the odds of it breaking down are gonna get more and more and more. But with a cartridge, that's not the case. You can only read a traditional hard drive a certain number of times, but cartridges don't really kind of fall into that.
No. And that's why
so it is clever by Nintendo to do that.
Because like my little cartridges, because obviously played with the DS, and that's kind of where they stabbed at, where they still did cartridges for the DS games.
Yeah.
They're handhelds.
Vita switched from the PSP to the Vita. They went from like these weird optical discs called UMD.
Which you almost broke.
Yeah, that they were they were proprietary, so they just wanted to kind of corner the market and make these things big, just in the same way that they had helped DVDs and Blu-rays.
Yeah.
And that didn't work at that time for Sony. And then the Vita has cartridges as well that are almost the same size as the Switch ones. They're a little smaller, but
which is legit.
yeah.
But coming roundabout to gotta get the titty sparkler for nerd alert here. Back to the Switch though, I feel like with Nintendo, they honestly don't need to do a Pro or a Slim ever.
Well, they already have a Lite though.
But that's a handheld game.
Yeah, but that's essentially a slim version of it.
But
it's smaller, it's cheaper.
It doesn't hook into the docks.
No, I know, but the slim versions don't necessarily need to do exactly the same thing as the other one. They just need to be the basis of the same hardware and play the same games.
If you think about it, though,
and they do.
The whole concept of the Switch, and this is what you and I will argue, is it can be on your TV or on the go.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The Lite is just a handheld. It's not.
But
it's basically their new version of their DS.
It's a slim version, though, of it. It's a smaller, more compact version that's cheaper. I mean, with running relatively the same hardware. So it's like, it's the same, like, from a design point, it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, they removed the, being able to play it on
the TV.
But
then it's not a console then.
But we're already in, like, hybrid territory. Like,
yeah,
Nintendo is the only console that does this. So this Slim is accordingly going to automatically be different.
Which is weird.
It's not mimicking Sony or Microsoft in any way or any other company.
If you just think about how weird, like, Nintendo is, just Nintendo, and the fact that it's honestly way advanced in a lot of ways and not at the same time. Because it's seeing what's happening where, like, you know, people playing games on their cell phones and on the go, where it's combining the handheld and TV, and then the same breath.
The fact that it's even feasible even in 2020 is amazing. Like, right. And they're shoving these huge monster games onto it, and it's running handheld.
Yeah.
Like, you can play, you know, Doom, Wolfenstein, The Witcher, like, Metro. Like, you can play all these, like, crazy games, even though the hardware power technically isn't up to standard to the other ones, but you can play it on the go. And plus, it doesn't really matter as much because the screen's smaller. So if you're playing it in handheld anyways, your resolution automatically is going to be driven down. The human eye can only
see
in HD at certain sizes of screens. And if it's a screen that small, which it is, you're not going to be able to tell the difference between 720 and 1080.
Exactly.
You can't. Like, biologically, you can't. Like, I know there's a lot of people out there that will say, well, I can see the difference. It's like, no, you can. And you can't with most televisions. Like, you can't tell the difference between 720 and 1080. You just can't. You have to have, like, it has to be more than, like, 56 inches or something like that, like, television size, to be able to tell the difference between low and HD and high
to be seen.
Yeah, and it's and then you get into, like, television screens with, like, their refresh rate and stuff like that, but that's a different story.
Let's not nerd it out anymore. Like, we're just, like, bored 90% of our peeps on here. I mean, it's extremely important to know this information and to see why people do the Slims and the Pros. And it's just kind of interesting to see how Nintendo is, but isn't doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that they have done a Slim, like, it's a Lite, and they've done that with their handheld market as well, like, where they've had, like, a
the smaller
DS
versions or DS, yeah.
And, they've done even, like, Pros in their handheld market, because there was, like, the 3DS, but then there was the 3DS XL. That actually had better hardware in it. There was only some games you could only play on that one. You couldn't play it on your regular 3DS. So, they, again, do it in their own way, especially in their naming conventions, but they have done like Pro versions of handhelds and Lite versions of
which is it's just funny to see because it's such a different Nintendo's just a different beast in its own right, where it's like
the Game Boy Advance can play like Game Boy Color games and stuff. That could be considered like an advanced, like a Pro version of your Game Boy Color.
Yeah, because if you think about it,
or like maybe the SP to the Advance would be better.
Yeah, SP to the
because they could play
all the
advanced games as well, but it
black and white ones,
different
older
form factor. Yeah.
Well, the cool part is like with Nintendo because they're basically handheld driven and centric company, and
I mean they've been successful in both markets, but I feel like especially right now, there's nobody else in the handheld market, and they're not even entirely in the handheld market.
No,
they're 50-50 right now with the one machine.
With the single thought though,
they're like 1 foot in the handheld market, 1 foot in the console market with one machine. Like that's how they're doing it now. I'm only afraid that they might corner themselves, where it's like they're gonna have to do like a Switch 2 or divest the Switch brand for their next console.
What do you think? What do you mean by that?
That if you want a handheld from Nintendo, then it's going to be a Switch or some iteration of that, and then they'll have something that doesn't do both. Mm-hmm. That'll be like a home console. That'll be Nintendo, whatever they call it.
64 Reborn.
Yeah, yeah.
But at this point, do you think they could get away with that?
I think there's so much good faith with Nintendo that they could. I don't think they will so much, because I think they're already inclined to take something that's very incredibly popular and further it. I think that's what they tried to do with the Wii U, because the Wii was such a powerhouse in like sales and stuff and was so popular.
They just fucked up with the naming on that one, honestly.
That they tried to...
Can you back to the Wii U was named the Switch?
Yeah, I mean, the Wii U was trying to be a Switch.
That's what I'm saying.
It's just, I don't think the technology had gotten there yet. But they were really close. They were obviously heavy into R&D to pull the Switch off. But that's why they had the tablet for the Wii U and stuff, where you could, you're essentially like streaming it to your tablet.
Yeah, playing on it. And
yeah, or you could play it, on your... You were playing it on your TV and then effectively like remote playing at the same time on your tablet.
That's just weird.
I don't think they could just cram the hardware of the entire console into the tablet. I think that's what happened because of technology, and then they were able to figure it out and then come up with a Switch, which has obviously been wildly successful. I think people would rather have like a Switch 2 or something. I don't know if they would call it that, but
I think so too. I think what they need to do, if they do. And you're right.
Eventually, they will do one. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they should do a Pro though. No, I don't think they should do an iterative in between.
No, because they had their version of a Slim essentially, which is the Lite. But then you can also kind of just argue the fact that it's just a handheld. Yeah, because it is. That's all it is. It's a handheld. It's basically
absolutely
excuse me. The DS grown-up version is what it is.
Yeah, I take it the other way. I find it to be like the Switch's little brother, the Slim. Like, and so I think that was actually very intuitive and smart of Nintendo, because just in the same way where I talked about like the Pro versions of consoles, if you wanted that bump in graphical fidelity and like hardware, you could purchase that in between. Yeah. However, if you didn't, you would be fine with your PS4 still. Like, say you didn't have the money or you didn't want to or whatever. Like, it wasn't like there was PS4 exclusive games, so it's still the same console. Yeah. But one shows its graphics and colors a little bit better. And the Nintendo Lite or the Switch Lite done a great job, because Switch had been on the market for a couple of years. So I think people who have had a Switch have already figured out that they either prefer to play it on their television or on the go. And so if you're more on the go,
it's a little harder to...
You might get that iteration because it's like, well, I have a crazy commute. I'm in a train or an Uber or something. Or I'm flying, all over the country for, business or family or whatever. You'll take the Lite because it's got a better form factor. It's a little bit smaller. Yeah. You're only using it on the go anyways. It's got a better battery life. And so,
you can still play all the games.
And you can still play all your Switch games. So they gave like the consumer base enough time to figure out what kind of Nintendo Switch gamer they were, and then they released something that kind of filled the void.
For both of them, yeah.
So it was kind of cool.
Which is cool because they stopped doing handhelds. Not necessarily stopped doing handhelds. They haven't come out with a new DS in a while.
They have been distancing themselves, though, from the Nintendo DS. And it would be redundant to put out a handheld only.
Well, yeah, but that's what they were doing. They were trying to get in the market, see if what they're doing with the Switch, and see the fact that, they have the capacity, the words always work. Yes, thank you. To do both. They're still a handheld, but yes, it's still a console. Yeah. And then they obviously let people realize, I actually still like my Nintendo handhelds. I wish they would have just done a handheld, or could, obviously, like you said, they were getting away from the DS or diving away towards that name, and just kind of popped in the Switch Lite, which is
And that's a good example that you bring
Mhm.
up is maybe people haven't bought a Switch because they only ever played the Nintendo handhelds, and then the Lite offers them
that handheld.
yeah, and they know that they're playing
We
traditional console games too. For a lot of people, they're playing it
so
on
they
the
can
go.
also be in the conversation as well. You
Yeah,
also have to think too, and this is probably why they did it because of the Switch Lite. Why would I be able to play a Pokemon game on the Switch Lite if it's a slim version and not my Switch?
yeah,
That's why they released it on the Switch first and then the Switch Lite, so you can still have that essential Pokemon game on the go.
exactly. Yeah, because they don't really have a separate designated handheld.
No, and
Because
Pokemon,
why would you?
yeah, and Pokemon
It's
always
redundant to the consoles you have out.
yeah, and
so.
the Pokemon games have always been on the handheld, and I just feel dumb because I did just be like, oh, light bulb went off. That's why they did it.
Yeah, well, plus they had nowhere else to put it on.
Yeah, because they closed all the other systems down.
Yeah, everything else is like pretty much done.
Mm-hmm.
And the 3DS never did as well compared to the DS anyways, and it was already
kind of
limping along.
yeah.
You know, for granted there isn't a lot of competition there, so sales are still sales, but it wasn't as huge of a success as DS was. It just wasn't. And so to switch
kind of gears.
pun intended actually to the Nintendo Switch, a hybrid console was a smart decision.
Because you still feed that satisfactory, and people who like Nintendo and like the console, and then people who like Nintendo who like the handheld.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing both. And Nintendo has a good track record anyways of putting out multiple iterations of handhelds or, like, consoles, so... Not consoles, per se.
Not consoles. Handheld.
Yeah.
Consoles, no. Because, like, I know when we first got the Switch, I just played a handheld version, because I was used to playing my Nintendo's handheld.
Yeah, and for me, I prefer sitting on the couch and playing it as a console, and so that's how I've played it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's a little more difficult for me. And for me, handhelds in my mind are like the PSP and the Vita and stuff like that in particular.
Well, that's why I feel like we got the Lite. That would be a good fit for you because that would kind of fill in that void for handhelds.
It would be for me like the
and I think
the next gen handheld for me past
look,
the Vita. You know.
Let me look too. I think the buttoning graphics are different.
Yeah, I've heard the form factor on the Joy-Cons is better because they don't obviously remove from the Switch Lite. So.
Let me see. I think they obviously it's meant to be a handheld, so they have.
I'm sure the form factor is better.
Only $200 still. That's not bad.
No, that's like its base price.
Yeah, it's more
a little more spaced out. Which would work for me. And
which
it looks
was
a little better designed. Just
which
overall,
was kind of the
with,
complaint
like,
of the Joy-Cons and stuff.
But main face buttons. But yeah, and that is probably something that you know. Once that hits like $100 or something, I will probably purchase, you know, a few years down the line. And I will use that as, you know, my designated handheld because I do like to play handheld consoles.
Yeah.
I still play my Vita, you know, regularly. And even I've been diving back in old PSP games.
They're actually, I think, want to say, honestly, the size of your Vita. Maybe a little bigger.
I think it's like right in between the Vita and the Switch.
Yeah, it's like a little bigger. But
and
still,
the Vita doesn't bother me.
But then again, it fulfills that need for having handheld and still being able to play your Switch or big console games in a handheld version. Could you imagine like playing The Witcher 3 just on the go?
I know, which is amazing. Which you can do right now, which is insane. I saw Cory Barlog, who's the game director for God of War, from Sony and Santa Monica, and he was talking about it. He was like, it's a miracle that they were able to get this size of a game onto a handheld. This is really cool. This is a technical achievement. You know?
Yeah,
and it really is. Like,
imagine like just Doom on the go.
Yeah.
You know.
Which, when you first got me my copy of Doom for the Switch, I played online, like, in bed.
Yeah, you did.
Like, and I rocked it. It was great. Like, I don't think there's a lot of people playing probably shooters on the Switch, but...
No, not really.
Especially really arcadey ones, but...
Yeah.
I had a blast doing it, and it was cool to be able to even have that option. I don't play our Switch very often anymore in handheld mode since I have the awesome controller that you gifted me.
Yeah.
But, it's cool just to have the option.
And
I can if I want to.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how they're going to go with their next generation console because, like you said, they're not even fucking halfway through their life cycle in this one.
No, and there have been a few articles floating around recently just because the PS5 and the Xbox
are coming
Series
out,
X
so they're probably
out.
inquiring with Nintendo. Well, they're coming out.
Yeah, and I even read an article recently where it was Microsoft. They were talking about how they don't even view Sony and Nintendo as a
competitor.
A competitor.
Mm-mm.
More like Google Stadia and then something else.
Something else online or handheld.
Yeah, it was. And I would say that Sony and Microsoft are more competitors than they both would probably like to admit because they occupy a space closer to one another.
Yep.
However, I do agree with all these articles and the like heads of companies because all three companies have gone in vastly different
directions,
ways with this past generation, and it looks like they're going to continue that trend into the next.
Which will be cool.
It's like Nintendo went for the hybrid console that we just, actively discussed, which is very unique and very them, so they've been able to kind of corner that market, make a market, and then corner it. PlayStation seems to be going for like hardcore gamers. They want to be powerful and they want to have great exclusives. And they're still a hardware company and active about it. Microsoft seems to want to go more like into software and like streaming. And even though Sony has some counterparts to that, they're not as good as Microsoft.
Yeah.
And that's not really their focus. So it's like, obviously, one is focused more towards like cloud and streaming and software sales. One is focused more on like hardware and hardcore experiences and exclusives. And then you have Nintendo, which wants to be a handheld and a console.
Yep.
So it's like, those are all three vastly different
consoles.
models, for business. But they all technically exist in the same space, so I can definitely understand why Phil Spencer said that Microsoft doesn't directly compete with Sony or Nintendo anymore. Or why Nintendo's like, well, we don't really compete with Sony or Microsoft anymore either.
You mean
Nintendo, yeah. And so they're focusing on other
avenues, yeah.
Yeah. And they're fulfilling a niche for their fan base and their gamers, and they're just following up on that. They're taking different rabbit holes, but they all start at the same tree. And it's like, it's kind of interesting.
It is, and I'm super excited to see what Nintendo's going to do for their future console. If they're gonna be the Switch 2 or how they're gonna product market it. I hope they don't do the Switch 2. I'm honestly, because the Wii U kind of wasn't a 2, but just the naming was just too fucked up, and I feel like if they could just dive into Switch 2, I think they should call it something else. Call it the Click, the little Nintendo Click sound.
I don't know, yeah. I mean, I feel like in that instance you would want it to be similar to the Switch. You just put a number there, not like Wii U. Or letter. If they had done the Wii 2, I think they would have been fine. Or more fine than they ended up being.
Yeah.
They didn't do that, though. I think if they did the Switch 2, or they called it that, I think it would be fine. People would know that it's different. You can only play games on the Switch 2, you can't play Switch 2 games on the original Switch,
Something along those lines.
Yeah, and then Nintendo does need to focus on marketing. They're a little murky in that. But things are changing for console generations anyway, so I think they're all kind of in an unusual space for marketing. I don't think they quite know how to market their consoles because they have gone in different directions. And then, what's your urge to buy a PS4 if the PS5 plays PS4 games?
Exactly.
How do you market that?
Yeah.
How do you get sales out of like new games coming to the PS4 now, this year in particular, if you can just wait 6 months?
And it's just kind of crazy to see how, what the powerhouses, well, not essentially powerhouses, because they're all powerhouses in their own right.
They are, yeah.
But where it's like with Sony and Microsoft, they're basically neck and neck or year off of one another with their generations, and Nintendo's like, I'll put one out when I feel like it.
Yeah. Well, and they course corrected. They quickly put out the Switch and discontinued the Wii U, and that was a smart move.
Yeah, they should have.
They recovered very well from the Wii U very quickly. And it did put them a half generation off, and probably for the better, because that does remove competition.
It does.
It's not like 3 consoles are coming out in the exact same month.
Yeah, in 2020.
Which would be a little bit difficult, especially on the wallet of the consumer.
Yeah, since you and I both play, I play Nintendo and you play
so
Sony,
we'd probably be saving up to purchase 2 consoles in the same month, within a couple weeks of each other.
Couple $800 right there.
Yeah, you say both consoles. You say one's $300, and Nintendo's usually a little cheaper, and say PS5's $400. Yeah, they're $700.
Yeah, that's like one of our house payments right there.
And then if you want to talk about you want a couple games for it, or an extra controller or something. I mean, you're out up to $1,000 very easily.
Oh yeah.
But if you just have to focus on, okay, I'm gonna buy an Xbox One Series X or a PS5, not both, just one or the other. I'll shell the $400, and then 3 years later, the next iteration
Switch 2 is coming out.
Then it's like, okay, well, there's $300, but it's 3 years later, and it's halfway in the cycle of the PS5 and the Xbox One Series X. So
fair enough. All right, I think to make full circle and wrap this up is, they do have their own versions of their light slims and stuff, but they don't need pros.
Yeah, I agree with that. The only thing, I'll play devil's advocate a little bit. I agree they shouldn't have a Pro. The only thing that I think might bite them in the ass is that the Switch has been very successful with third-party support this generation. And so what I mean by that is, like, you could have, like, I'm trying to think of it. Like The Witcher. The Witcher is a good example. Witcher came out on, more powerful tech. They were able to scale it down and put it on the Switch. What happens if we have The Witcher 4 on the PS5 and the Xbox One Series X? Will they still be able to scale that down to put it on the Switch, or will the Switch hardware be so lacking by that point? Because now they're another generation off. Well, they just won't have the hardware power to be able to put third-party games on their system.
Then that's going to be a conversation. Do they come out with their next generation?
Yeah, but the thing is, we're talking about, like, there's going to be 3 years worth of games probably for a 6-year cycle for the Switch. Are they going to give up for 3 years and not have third-party support?
Nintendo not.
That's the only thing that I could picture, like, hindering them if they don't do an in-between iteration, just so they could keep up.
Got some long legs.
With third-party titles coming over. Supposedly the Nintendo Switch is very easy to scale too, though. So maybe the PS5 and the Xbox Series 1X won't be as powerful as we think they are. They won't be utilizing all the power that's in those machines. They should,
and so they'll be fine.
And so, yeah, they will be able to scale down the first couple years worth of games to the Switch.
And by the time it gets too complicated, they're going to need to roll out with their next generation. So.
So they might buy themselves enough time, just with that fact that, they won't ever even need to consider or think about, like, a Pro version of their Switch. And they'll have, the next iteration, of their Nintendo console, and then they'll be able to have that third-party support again with PS5 games and
which would be cool.
Xbox One Series X games. I hate saying that; it's so long.
It's such just a dumbass name.
Especially since like the X is a placeholder.
It's like you get such an easy flow by every other fucking console.
Yeah, Nintendo Switch, PS5, like very kind of like old school but new, obviously.
Flow of the tongue.
And then it's like Xbox One Series X. And I know the X is just a placeholder because they're just going to put, it'll be like Series S is their digital one, Series whatever L is their like powerful one. And then it's like,
they done fucked up with their names.
Yeah, well, they're making it into an iPhone, but...
No way, babe.
That's a different story. Another topic of discussion. Probably rage quit, but
fair enough. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been 64 Bits of Rage. I do agree. They don't need to make a Pro. By the time it needs to roll out, they'll just come out with a new console.
Exactly. Yep, that's been episode 6. So should Nintendo release a Switch Pro?
No.
Yeah, we've given our
consensus.
Opinion.
No. Yeah. All right. Any housekeeping, kind sir?
64 Bits of Rage is now available on all streaming and podcast platforms.
Which is legit. Yeah. We're finally big enough-ish.
Exactly, yeah. So you can find it anywhere. So if you've been listening to it on a very, like, obtuse kind of platform that you normally don't partake in, go to the normal platform that you listen to podcasts. You will find it there.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
I'm like serious at it.
And then we should be rolling out t-shirts within the next month or so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably end of March.
Something like that. Because it's soon. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah. So by the time this releases, soonest end of March, latest summer 2020.
Yep.
But yeah, we're working on podcast t-shirts for Rage Quit and 64 Bits of Rage, so you should be able to purchase those, and then we will roll out more merchandise as we see fit, and as it becomes available, kind of a thing.
Of course.
Woohoo!
Yeah, no, it's super exciting. Finally rolling out with merch, yo.
I know. Other than that, no, I think we're good.
All right, but yeah. Well, my name's Ariel Schultz.
My name's Anthony Schultz.
As always, follow the bear.
Peace.
Bye.